This is Bill Blatchford in this webinar. What I'd like to do today is talk to you about systems that we put in offices, but more specifically, I'd like to spend some time on your systems that you're using in your office. As you can see, we've narrowed it down to 5 major systems: marketing, sales, scheduling, collections, and my personal favorite, profitability systems. Over the years, we've identified that these 5 core systems are the heartbeat of your practice.
So let's start with the center of the systems universe, collections. In this new economy, the efficiency of your collection system will have more impact than ever on your profit. We'll talk about profitability systems in just a few minutes on this webinar. But if your collection systems are not operating at optimal performance, it affects all of your 5 core systems. On the systems analyzer you see on the screen now, I want to start by having you rate your system for your daily collection goal. And here's an interesting fact. In the 3,000 plus practices I've coached over the past 3, almost 4 decades, most of these practices, when we started to work with them, did not have a daily collection goal. They may have had a goal that was mentioned once a year in January or even a few times a year, but nothing was tracked on a daily basis where the team was held fully accountable. Now we've corrected that on day 1 of their customized coaching program. But I want you to rate the quality of your system for your total team accountability around a daily collection goal. If you don't have a daily collection goal, give yourself a 0. If you have one, but you seldom hit it, and the team has no accountability tied into reaching this goal every month, give yourself the appropriate grade. You see, holding your team 100% accountable for hitting your daily collection goal every day is the difference between having an okay day or even an awful day and having a perfect day. We'll talk more about scheduling the perfect day every day later in this webinar when we talk about your scheduling systems, but go ahead and give a grade to your daily collection goal. With our system, every team member not only knows the daily collection goal, but everyone is cross-trained to be able to talk to your patients with total confidence when it's time to collect money. Because ultimately, their bonus is tied directly into hitting this number. And it's totally transparent. If they don't hit their numbers, they don't get a bonus. We give team members the tools and the training to hit these numbers, and in many cases, crush these numbers every single day. Almost all the practices we work with do not send statements because they are collecting in advance on many cases, and if not always collecting the day of treatment. Collecting insurance is obviously different, but we can show you how to simplify that as well.
So let's dig deeper on the marketing systems. Last week, we had a doctor in our coaching program that we had him rate his systems, and I'll show you this analysis. It'll be on your screen. One of the top reasons he wanted to work this is because his systems were outdated. He'd only graded one system a perfect 10, and he was frustrated because he didn't have a system on almost everything. So we took a look at this, and marketing, spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to bring patients in the door. But one of the things that we keep track of, and on his is the ROI on his marketing, which is one of our systems, was non-existent. He wasn't keeping track of that at all. So if you're going to spend money on marketing, and I think there's a myth out there that most dentists believe, if I just had more new patients, everything will be great. Well, this particular doctor had lots of new patients, but once they arrived in the office, nothing was happening. So one of our systems, just to describe it briefly, is you keep track of each item you do in marketing. For example, if you're doing a billboard, how much do I spend on that billboard? How many phone calls come in as a result of that billboard? And of course, you use a discrete number for that, so you know exactly where the call is coming from. How many of those phone calls convert to consultation appointments? Should be close to 100% if your communication skills on the phone are good. And then what is the dollar value of the treatment that was accepted from those patients? So you can start to figure this out. So is that billboard working? What is the message on that billboard? As we change the message on the billboard, what is the return on that? If we're doing direct mail, what is the return on that direct mail piece? And we don't just measure how many times the phone rings or how many patients show up, but what is the actual dollar value of the treatment Over the years, and with all these practices we've worked with, we have found that the word of mouth referrals tend to end up in the top 20 on the 80/20 system as well. And yet, in most offices, the doctor would rather write a check to some marketing company to do the magic mailer or the magic radio commercial or TV commercial than actually ask for a referral. So what we do is we put together a system in the office, and we actually develop scripts with the team members to ask for referrals, and we set up a system of accountability. In today's market, a lot of credence is given to online reviews, and we've taken offices that have 2 or 3 good, 5-star reviews and maybe 1 bad review. And over a year's time, they'll end up with a 100, 200, we've seen as many as 300 good Google reviews in a year. We've also taken that number of word-of-mouth referrals, and we have doubled it and tripled it in many offices. And one of the reasons we're able to do that, it is such a neglected system. Probably the biggest deficiency in dental offices are their sales systems. There's virtually no training in this. You'll take a look at this system. You see, everyone says, if I just have more new patients. I mean, that's the number one, I think the number one complaint of dentists is new patient flow. Well, very often we find it's not the number of new patients, it's what do we do with that new patient once they arrive in the office? And that's where the sales systems come into play. So let's talk a little bit about our sales system. So we call it integrity selling. By defining integrity selling, I'd just like to say a few words. Integrity selling is a very simple thing. First off, it's not convincing people. It is not talking people into. It's not educating them into submission, which is what many of us have tried. I tried it, didn't work. You've tried it, doesn't work. Integrity selling is simply finding out what people want and offering it to them. Find out what they want long term. Find out what their ultimate goals are. And stop selling individual pieces of dentistry or individual treatments. Sell a complete treatment plan.
Probably the one thing that attracts the most attention to us is our patented right brain, left brain case presentation system. There's nothing like this in all of dentistry. You see, the emotional side of the brain is the right side. And there's a ton of research that consistently tells us that this is where people make their major purchasing decisions. And dentistry falls into this. In fact, we hear right brain comments from patients all the time, but are we really listening to them? Like when someone says, I really miss sinking my teeth into a great ribeye. Or my daughter's getting married in 6 months, and I'm terrified that I'll be the only one in the photo who isn't smiling. Or this is the one we hear a lot. I'm embarrassed about my teeth. Or sometimes it's simply, I just don't feel confident about my smile. So the Blatchford right brain, left brain system digs deep into their why. Why is this important to you? We've designed a series of questions to get patients over to the right side of their brain through a straightforward conversation about what they really want and why it's important to them. Nothing salesy, nothing pushy, just a real conversation that we can literally train anyone on your team to have with patients. I invented this system more than 35 years ago, and my daughter, Dr. Christina Blatchford, has fine-tuned it over the years in her own practice. The bottom line is this system works in both small towns and big cities. And I know this because it's been used with stunning success at thousands of practices all across the US and Canada. I get texts and emails from dentists all the time about how this one simple system helped close another case. Sometimes they're bread and butter cases, and other times they're real big ones, like all on X or full mouth cases. If there's one thing on this webinar I want you to remember, it's this. Patients want value. And this does not mean the cheapest or the lowest cost dentistry. And they will always pay for value if you do a good job of tapping into their right brain to uncover what's important to them.
Now, one of the biggest things that we do is getting the team involved in this. And of course, to get the team involved, the question is, what's in it for me? And we have a bonus system that's probably the most copied bonus system in all of dentistry. And it's a system that another consultant who was in my dental office and I developed many years ago, and it's been altered and improved over the years, but basically it's the same system. It's called BAM. And we established that level, that bare ass minimum, that level that we must hit to put staff salaries at that magic 20% number, which again goes back to our overhead system. But this team understands this, and they get involved, and because of the bonus system, they're willing to study, they're willing to practice, they're willing to role play, and they're willing to ask the questions and listen. So we have a system to control your overhead. Now, remember that if you have this system and it's really working, your overhead's down in that 50 to 55%, give yourself a 10. If it's not, give yourself an appropriate number. You see, overhead is really something that we emphasize. It's not how much dentistry that we do, it's not how much we collect, it's how much we keep that is important. And I mean, you could be $1 million practice at a 70% overhead, or a $600,000 practice at a 50% overhead, and the net income is identical. These practices that we see today, the trend seems to be these large grossing practices, sometimes multiple locations, and yet their overhead is out of control. You see, overhead is truly one of your biggest, if not the biggest, leverage points of how we quickly make good practices into great practices. We also work with a lot of practices doing north of $2 million. And the example is you could have a $2 million practice at a 70% overhead, or a $1.2 million practice with a 50% overhead. And again, net income is exactly the same. So let's rank your scheduling systems. You'll notice there are 3 bubbles on the scheduling system, one being block booking. Now, block booking is a very simple thing. Block booking is a template. Block booking is an ideal day for you. And this all developed out of actually the same consultant. His name was John Oldenburg, that was my consultant at the time. He came in one day and asked, have you ever had a great day? And the answer is yes. He said, well, tell me about that great day. And we talked about it was easy, it was productive, everything, excellent patient care, everything about it. And have you ever had a day that you wish you'd have chosen another career? And of course, the answer is certainly. We've all had those days. And he said, well, why don't we schedule all good days? And so what we did, block booking grew from this. And what we did is we have every doctor actually design a perfect day. And we schedule to that. Now, you'll notice another bubble here is the team's accountability to that ideal schedule. And you see, we have to have this template. We have to have this perfect schedule in place in order to hold people accountable to it. So what works, you see, is that clients who are following this, patients get excellent care. The doctor is not scrambling. And at the end of the day, you say, wow, that was an incredible day. So what is perfect for you? Now, does that mean that every day turns out exactly the way we planned it? Of course not. We actually call what I call an audible at the line of scrimmage from time to time. And that's where we break in and say, okay, let's change a little bit. Let's do this. So a lot of things about this, but you have to have a system in place. It's not just a matter of putting a patient's name on every line in the appointment schedule. So I'm going to ask you to rate your profitability systems. And looking at the analyzer, you see that's the one towards the bottom of your page. And one of the things it talks about is the overhead control system. So rate your overhead control system on a scale 1 to 10. Rate your 80-20 system. Now, I may have to explain the 80-20 system. This is something that we have taught for years. And the reason is that all patients aren't equal. Everyone's created equal, but they don't all have the same value system for dentistry or anything else. And so here's what we do. We take a look at your patients and we divide them into the top 20, which are roughly the 20% of your patients who provide you with roughly 80% of your income. Now, that's pretty standard across general dental practices, and we've analyzed literally thousands of these. We want to know everything about that 20%. We want to know everything about them, from age, gender, type of treatment we did, how they found our office, every characteristic of those patients. And that's who our target market becomes. That's who we look for. Now, we then have a group of people in the middle, which is the 60%, which we call the Farm Club. And the Farm Club contribute 30% of your income. Now, if you're paying attention to the numbers here, that means you're up to 110% of your income, and you still have 20% to go. And that's the bottom 20. They actually cost you 10%. But here's the irony of this system. When we start to study this, every office finds that most of the policies they put in place in their office are aimed at the bottom 20%. In other words, the systems that most offices are using are designed for the bottom 20% rather than the top 20%. So this is a huge system right here. That's the 80-20 system. So go ahead and rank all of your systems on profitability on a score 1 to 10. See, my premise is if doctors put just a little bit of energy into the profitability system, they can dramatically increase their net income. All right, so let's talk about how to fill out this form. So this systems analyzer, which you now have on your screen, should not take more than 5 to 10 minutes. And I will just say that being a dentist myself and understanding a little bit about how we think, don't overthink this. Just grade them. The first number that comes to mind right off the top of your head, what is the number that comes to mind? Now, you'll see on the analyzer itself, there is a scale from 1 to 10, 5 being average, 10 being really good, 1 being it hardly exists. So just the first number comes to mind. And you can do this real quickly. So what I would suggest you do is just make this easy. Download the systems analyzer and print it. That's the easiest thing to do. And then just go through it and put a number grade next to each system. If the system's perfect, you get a 10. If you don't have a system, you give it a 0. Then simply take a photo of this completed systems analyzer and you email it to us. So if you want to complete this on an iPad, it's also very simple. So it looks perfect like this one does. Simply go to the Tools menu, select Markup, and add a number. And if you do, I will personally review your system's grades and speak directly with you on a phone call, where I'll show you how to improve each system that you don't rate a 10. So once you complete your systems grade, simply send it to my email, systems@blatchford.com. That's systems@blatchford.com. And if you have any questions, call my office at 866-495-7080. That's 866-495-7080.
You know, most dentists talk a lot about trying to change their systems, improve their systems, but few actually do anything about it. As soon as you have completed the systems analyzer, send it to me. My assistant will text you a link to schedule a one-on-one call. So go ahead and click on the link below to download the system analyzer and get started. Thanks for watching the webinar. I guarantee you the call will change your life. Click on the link below.